Good evening, everyone. Okay. Let me know I'm audible or not. Okay. Today we are going to discuss some key points on the on-prem SQL server, and we'll compare the same concept on the Azure Pass. So actually, what I thought I can discuss the Azure Pass in the end of the on-prem classes, but the thing is like once we completed the part to part, so that we can compare the things from on-prem to Azure Pass SQL. Here, IaaS model and on-prem, we can call like a on-prem only. Like what I mean to say, if the SQL server is installed on the computer or virtual node, then we can call, irrespective of the environment, we can call like a on-prem. The people will get confused like on-prem and IaaS model. Why? Because in the IaaS model and on-prem, the main uh, the pillar is Windows virtual machine. In that, we can install the software. So that is the reason we can call IaaS model. We can call like a on-prem. On-prem is like a the data center will maintain by the every organizations or maybe third party. But coming to the IaaS model, the data center and infrastructure will maintain the Microsoft, but we are going to utilize as per the our requirement. But end of the last, we are going to install the software on the virtual computer. That is the IaaS model. So here I connected the on-prem SQL server. Last class we discussed about the server level roles and database level roles, and some other security topics like a difference between login and user, and some other differences between what is the difference between data generator and data generator, and some other individual database level role. So today, like we are going to discuss about the what is the schema and what is the database level role, and using the database level role, like database level role means like creating the user defined database level role. Generally, when we are going to create the user defined database level role, what is the purpose of that? And we are going to run the profiler, and what are the permissions are required. Once this topic completed, we can move into the Azure Pass. So now we can start go for the topic like a schema. So last class we discussed about the all the server level roles and the database level role. We discussed about the all these individual roles, and as well as practical also we did, right. Which permission, if you give something, what exactly you will do, and we see the differences, right. So now we are going to discuss about the schema. So here, what is the schema? Okay. So the thing is like the schema is very important. If you go for any like Oracle or Postgres or MySQL and SQL Server, the schema is the uh, first footprint. What exactly it will do? The schema is nothing but a work area, or maybe schema is a container that will provide the working area to the that particular database objects. Here database objects means like table, view, stored processes, and functions. So here the database, the default, the schema is DBO. So whenever we creating the table or view or stored procedure, by default the table will go to the work area, nothing but a DBO. So here DBO won't contain any data, but it contains the database objects, and it will provide the working environment to for the database objects. That is the purpose of the schema. So here generally we won't provide the access to the schema level, but sometimes we will provide the schema level access to the users as well. So that too kind of a specific requirement and specific project specifications. Generally, we won't provide, but as per the project requirement, we can provide the schema level permissions. So here, by default, DBO schema is there. Then what is the purpose of user-defined schema? So the user-defined schema is for, suppose like I have a two tables, kind of if you go for any organizations, in the organizations who are that particular organizations, we can call like an employee. But if you go for the environment, the employee will be like a HR, the employee will be like a developers, the employee will be testers. That is kind of a one organization. If you go for any business, like a sales and orders will be there, but the table name will be same. So in that scenario, in the one database, in the one schema, we can create only one table to the same name. But if I want to create the same name on the databases, it will allow only one table specific unique name to create. So if I want to create another table with the same name, that time we have to create a user defined schema while creating the table, and we can differentiate. Like as I mentioned, we have a like a HR employees are there. But if you create the employees by default, create table name. Let me go here. Let me create one database. I'm going to create a one user database. So the database can be created from the graphical user interface and as well as T-SQL. But always go for the graphical user interface while creating the database. Why? Because if you're going for creating the database using T-SQL, that will take default parameters from the model database, it will create. But the thing is like, as I mentioned, the creating database is not a, by looking at the creating database, it's a simple task. But while creating the database, we need to go for other parameters like a initial size and max size, and the where the database files are going, and what naming convention we are going to provide, and what is the recovery model, and what is the collation, other things, right? If you go for T-SQL, we have to mention and we have to remember all the things. Otherwise, simply give the command like create database name, that will create. So here I'm simply creating the database using T-SQL. But in the real time, go for always creating database using graphical user interface, as we discussed it in the last classes. Let me go and create some user database. Now user database is created. Okay, test database created. So let me go and create one table. Here I'm not mentioning any specific schema. if you not mention any specific schema, what it will do? It will go directly create the table on the database. So right now, if you go here, here we don't have any table. Okay, just observe the left hand side panel. Okay, so now I'm going to create the one table without specifying any extra keyword in front of the table name. If you do that, what will happen? It will go and create the table, and further that what are the values are entering and what are the activity we are going to do, that will go and work on the specific work area. That is called like a schema. So whenever you're going to create the table without mentioning schema, it will go to DBO. So here I created the table. Come here, refresh, go for, oh sorry, I created the, why it went to master? Let me use SDB. So as I mentioned, we have to be careful where we are running the query. See, right now what I did, I simply created the table, but I did not mention any use keyword, or else I did not mention any in the top. Like we have to, if you not mention, what will happen? What are the sessions previously open? Or else by default, it will go to the masters. So that is the reason always we have to be careful where we are running the query. That thing we can, as I mentioned, we can identify from the top and as well as in the bottom. In the bottom of the page, we can see where you, which user, which server, and as well as which database it is connected to that particular session. Let me go and execute. So if you execute user use database, in the top it got changed, and as well as in the bottom the session is pointing to the test database. Now let me go and create table. So now the table got created. If you go for tables, see in front of the table we can see the keyword like a DBO. So this DBO, it will provide the work area to the employees table, kind of like inserting the data or deleting the data, or maybe providing the permissions. It will work based upon that working area. So here employee table. If I want to create the one more employee table that is related to the other department, suppose, and also if you want to differentiate from the normal employee table to other employee table, so then what I need to do, I have to mention different schema. So here what I'm going to do, simply I'm creating the table without creating the schema. Now we will get the error that particular schema does not exist. Go and create schema. Let me, I want to create the table in the HR related working area. So just what I'm going to do, I'm going to using the same T-SQL, but in front of the employee, I'm using the keyword like HR. So if you go for tick mark, the tick mark will execute. Like this scenario we explained, right? When you go for the SQL Server architecture. So in the SQL Server architecture, what is the role of command parser? The command parser will go for semantics error and syntax error. So here syntax error is passed. But when we go for other condition, it will go on semantic. The semantic means like what are the values we are mentioning here, that will check in the server, then it will go check in the database, then it will check in the objects. If it is failed, it will go on send back to the users. So let me go and create here. So here we got error like that particular HR or that particular HR related schema, we don't have permissions. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a user defined schema like a HR. So schema also we can create graphical user interface or else T-SQL. If you want to create the graphical user interface, what you can do, go to the particular database, then go to the security, then go to the schema, right click, new schema. You have to provide what is the schema and what is the font of the schema. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create the schema using T-SQL. So here I'm going to schema called like HR, that is against the, I'm executing to the test database. Now schema is created. Just come here, refresh it, come to the security, then come to the schemas. See here, we have like a HR schema. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create the table on the HR schema. So I created the employee table, but I created in the HR related schema or working area. See, let me go and refresh the database. Go and check the tables. We can see the two tables, employees and employees, but one table is belongs to TPO, one table is belongs to HR. The other thing is like, if I want to go and insert the table, like values, that time if you're not specifying any schema name, that will go to default employee table. So that is the reason while entering the data, we have to make sure in front of the table, we have to mention the uh, schema name. Then only that particular data will go and sit on the that particular schema. Let me go on to real-time definition. What is the schema? So here, the schema is a logical container or a namespace within the database that groups together related to the database objects. It provides to organize and manage the database objects. What is that means? That means like in the database, what are the tables we are creating that will hold that particular working area. That is called like a deep schema, and it will manage the tables on that particular database. But if you ask in interview, no need to give exactly definition in the document. You can tell like the schema is nothing but a working area, and it is a logical container that groups all the objects together in the one particular working area. And also other important thing is, like if you want to create the another table in the same name on the database, that scenario we have to go for create user defined uh, user defined schemas, and we can keep the tables what I meant to say, uh, independently. Like one table belongs to one department, one table belongs to another department. That is the call of like a purpose of the uh, schema. But here the thing is like, as I mentioned, we can provide the permission on the schema level. Okay. So here, if you provide the permission on the schema level, what it will do, that particular related premises, it will execute. Okay. Uh, Let me go for the practical. So I'm going to create the one login on that particular database. So as I mentioned, the thing is like the create my login and mapping the users always go for graphical user interface. Why? Because creating the login and giving the permissions will fall under the SOC controls. Okay, we can discuss about the SOC controls end of the class. Why? Because the SOC control is very important for every organization to maintain the security and some other areas. So let me go and create the one login, and we can assign that login to the that particular database so that user will be created. But we have to make sure, don't confuse whenever the people asking for to create the account, to create the login, that means nothing but a creating the user. Last class we discussed, right, difference between login and user. I'm not going to explain that scenario. Just as simply going to create the login. Let me go for, there are some other comments. Let me, so here the thing is like, this is the very key important to meet the SOC controls. Okay, the SOC controls, whenever the people, if you go for any third party, if you want to internal organizations, the people are doing the audit, these two options we have to uncheck. If you click these options, our audit will fail. Okay, so this is the remember two things. Whenever you're creating the SQL account, that particular SQL account, in the we can see three radio buttons. In the three radio buttons, first radio button should be checked, and remaining other two radio buttons should be unchecked. If you check it, the audit will fail. Why? Because the user able to change the password, and the user able to give his own password. And also that is the one thing. Uh, the password policy means like at least 12 characters, and that should be strong. If you provide other tick mark, the user maybe create the password same like a user, and also he will give you the any 1 2 3 or maybe some other weak passwords. So, so that is the reason the password should be very secure. Let me go for give the password. So I'm going to map the user as database. Here I'm not going to provide any permissions. Okay, like just I'm giving the public level role. I'm not going to provide any database level role. I simply mapping the login to the that particular database. And also if you see here the schema, if you mention default schema empty, that will go for DBO. If you mention any particular schema, like we created like a HR, if you mention the HR, what will happen? What are the tables? If you are not specifying any keyword, okay, then what it will do by default, it will check the default schema, treat it like a what we mentioned here. The data will go to that particular table. So here, so the here requirement to requirement. Sometimes the project they don't want to keep the tables in the default schema. They will keep in the their own schema. But most of the projects and most of the companies, what they will do, they will go to the default schema. Let me go for script out. If you see what are the command I mentioned here, automatically the same thing here came. The other thing is like some other keywords is there. So we have to remember the T-SQL, but always go for graphical user interface for the specific commands. But the interview, if you go on attending the interview, some people will expect the specific areas to provide the answer using T-SQL. Those things I will tell, okay? Right now, I'm simply creating the one user that is called like a test login. So here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to log in the test login using this password. SQL authentication, test login, and what is the password? I'm entering the password. Okay, I connected. So here, if you go here, the people can able to see the all the tables, all the databases we discussed, right? So this is the one security area. Previous classes we discussed about the dedicated server and shared server. So the shared server always it's kind of like a violation. Why? Because the one customer can able to see the other customer database names, but they cannot able to see the inside the data. But even though the customer will go for like a some insecure. Why? Because by looking at the database name, they can able to see the other customer database. But even though they cannot do, but the people will go for insecure. So that is the reason we discussed that when we are going to for shared or dedicated. But right now we created the login and map to the test database. So I'm going to click here. The person, the login with test login, he can able to expand the database. If we go for other, they cannot expand. Why? Because we given the public role to the this database. So now here what I'm going to do, I'm going to give the schema level permission to get the data. Your grant execute is missing. Huh? So I'm pulling the data using execute. Here the select permission was denied on the HR table, HR employees. I'm going to give default schema employees. This is also denied. So if you provide the select permission on the schema, what will happen? What are the tables inside on the that particular database? You can able to uh, you can able to run that particular select statement. What I'm going to do? I'm giving a grant select grant select grant select user, right? And grant select what I meant to say DBO to test login. Grant select on. DBO data, DBO schema. Oh, let me go for good. Grant select on schema. Here we have to mention the schema keyword. After that, we have to mention dot. What do you mean this one? You have to mention this. Grant is the keyword, and after the keyword, what are the permissions? If you want to insert, you can mention insert. If you want to mention select, you can mention select. If you want to go for update, we have to update. The second keyword is what are the permissions we are going to assign to the that particular no here database level user, right? Schema to user. Let me give here to test login. Okay. Here I should not execute because I had to go for the master admin account. Executed. Just come here, refresh. Then you have to go for. See here, we are able to pull the data. So try to execute on the HR department. You will get the error. Why? Because we did not give the permissions to the HR schema. So here we can control the permission on the schema level as well. Not only database level or not only a kind of a object level or securables. So we can give the permission on the schema level. And one more thing is like here I provide the select permission. But if you go here, database, if you go for test database, but you cannot able see the yeah. So here we can able to see the only for employee table, not for the DBO schema, not for the HR. Why? Because we are given the select permission. That means view permission on the that particular kind of a table level permissions. So like that we can provide the schema level permission. Generally we won't provide, but the thing is like here why? Because let me give example here. If you go for security, if you go for logins, if I go for test login, okay. So if you go for user mapping, so here what I'm going to do, I'm going to give the database level role. If I give the data reader, what will happen? That will provide the permissions entire that particular database tables and as well as views, kind of a select permissions irrespective of the schemas. Suppose like the people cannot see the HR department. Why? Because HR department people only have to see the select the data, insert the data. But if you give the data reader, the person can able to see the what are the inside that particular database, irrespective of the DPO or irrespective of the user-defined schemas. So that is the reason we can provide the schema level permission to that particular schema. So I hope you understand the what is the schema and what is the how to provide the schema level permissions. So now let me move to the another topic, user defined role. But here don't confuse like what you mean to say, the database level role. Come on, somebody's calling. Yeah, here don't confuse for the creating the schema and assigning the permissions. So whenever the people are asking for, they want schema level permissions, then we have to be careful while providing the schema. Why? Because if you provide the permissions on the schema level, that means we are giving control to the that particular working area. Okay, so that is the reason we have to be careful while providing the schema level permissions. The select permissions okay, but if you go for insert, if you go for delete, that permissions very careful. Now I am going to discuss about the user defined roles. I hope you people understand for the schemas. Okay, let me stop the recording and I will go start recording for the database level role, so that whenever you watching the video, the people will go for topic by topic. Let me stop the recording. Then you can ask the any questions. Then we'll go for another topic.